Well, look at what we have here. It's a brand new Audi. It's called the Q2, and it's important for this brand in a number of ways. Fans of maths will have realized that the Q2 fits into the lineup below the Q3. And that might seem a little weird because it's like a fancier, more expensive Q3, but over the years what you'll see happening is that the Q3 and Q5 will become even more premium and a bit physically larger in size. There's also a Q8 coming, and that will be about the size of the Free State. Prices for this Q2 start at around 436,000 Rand, which doesn't seem too unreasonable. That will bag you the 1-litre TFSI model. But I would imagine that you'd like a few extras, a couple of little features, and that's when the price starts rising quite considerably. So if you'd like this rear blade in silver, that will cost you 2,700 Rand. A reverse camera is 5,300 Rand. Audi's virtual cockpit is 6,400 Rand. Those cool tail lights and those front LED headlights, that's 14,400 Rand. And if you'd like the sporty S-Line kit that this car is wearing, that will cost you a nice round 20,000 Rand. And what this means is cars like the Q2 standing right next to me can cost as much as 666,000 Rand. Two petrol engines are available and there's a diesel, but you can only have the 2-litre TDI with an auto box. We think the one to have is the 1.4 petrol. It's a decent mix of power and economy, and it's a good 54,000 Rand cheaper than the diesel. A quick word on this car's handling and suspension setup. Now, normally I find this topic very dull, but this car's setup is quite interesting. It's a bit firmer than you would expect. It's almost like Audi wanted to provide a hot hatch experience rather than an SUV experience. So it's not as comfortable as it could be, but the handling is a lot better in the corners. And bear in mind that this car is riding on 19-inch wheels. Now that usually negatively affects the ride comfort, so you'd be better off on 17 or 18-inch wheels, which are a bit cheaper as well. But then your car might not look as good. Inside, and everything is finished to a very high standard. It's very typical Audi. It's difficult to find fault anywhere. The Q2 is fitted with analog dials as standard, but as mentioned, you can have this full digital display fitted, and I think that that's really worth the extra spend. However, you'll get a 7-inch screen as standard in the center of the car, and if you want this larger 8-inch screen, you'll have to spend an extra 24,000 Rand. But it does come with navigation. Although we find it a bit odd that the screen doesn't disappear into the dash like it does in the A3 and the Q7. The good news is that the Q2 is ready for Android Auto and Apple's CarPlay, but you can't get Android Auto working. It's just not available in this country yet. However, CarPlay does work, and I'm very jealous of all of you with Apple devices. It's in the back seats where you really start to feel the size of this car. Despite its bold and chunky styling, it actually is a really compact vehicle, and as you can see, I'm using the sit behind myself test, and I have just enough knee room. I'm 5'9", so adults over 6 foot will probably find it quite tight back here. You definitely won't fit 3 adults side by side. However, I reckon for kids on longer journeys, it should be just fine. Boot space is pretty decent, if perhaps a little shallow, but the rear seats fold in a 60-40 split and they fold completely flat, which makes the car relatively practical. But I couldn't help but notice underneath the boot floor that there's about 3 to 4 inches of space between the boot floor and the skinny spare wheel. I'm not sure why they've done that. It seems like a bit of a waste, really. I think the styling of this Q2 is really going to divide opinion. I really like it, but this car is more important for Audi because it's a precursor to their future design language. So I suppose we'd better get used to all Audi SUVs looking like this. But I think my colleague summed it up perfectly. He said, this is Audi's first Marmite car. You're either going to love it or hate it. But I think Audi knows their target market, and this is going to successfully appeal to young urban trendsetters. It's a car that is a statement first and a motor vehicle second, and it does both those things rather well. And yes, the price is a bit difficult to swallow, but the Q2 is a car you want, not necessarily a car you need.